Hi, welcome back to the second part of The Haunted House by Charles Dickens, a ghost story. If you remember yesterday, our gentleman had taken the house to let because he needed some fresh country air, although this house doesn't seem to be giving you any fresh air. Anyway, let's see what happens next. I walked into the village with the desertion of this house upon my mind, and I found the landlord of the little inn standing in his doorstep. I bespoke breakfast and broached the subject of the house. "Is it haunted?" I asked. The landlord looked at me, shook his head and answered, "I say nothing." "Then it is haunted." "Well," cried the landlord, in an outburst of frankness that had the appearance of desperation, "I wouldn't sleep in it." "Why not?" "If I wanted to have all the bells in a house ring with nobody to ring 'em, and all the house in a house, and the doors in a house bang and nobody to bang 'em, and all sorts of feet treading about with no feet there, why then," said the landlord, "I'd sleep in a house." "Was anything seen there?" The landlord looked at me again, and then, with his former appearance of desperation, called down his stable yard for "Ikey." The call produced a high-shouldered young fellow with a round, red face, a short crop of sandy hair, a very broad, humorous mouth, a turned-up nose, and a great-sleeved waistcoat of purple bars with mother-of-pearl buttons that seemed to be growing upon him, and to be in a fair way, if it were not pruned, of covering his head and overrunning his boots. "This gentleman want to know," said the landlord, "if anything's seen at the Poplars." "Hooded woman with a howl," said Ikey, in a state of great freshness. "Do you mean a cry?" "I mean a bird, sir." "A hooded woman with an owl. Dear me, did you ever see her?" "I seen a howl." "Never the woman?" "Not so plain as a howl, but they always keeps together." "Has anybody ever seen the woman and plainly as the owl?" "Lord bless you, sir, lots." "Who?" "Oh, bless you, sir, lots. The general dealer opposite, for instance, who is opening his shop." "Perkins? Bless you, Perkins wouldn't go annoy the place." "Nah," observed the young man, with a considerable feeling. "He ain't overwise, ain't Perkins, but he ain't such a fool as that." Here the landlord murmured his confidence in Perkins's knowledge and knowing better. "Who is, or who was, the hooded woman with the owl? Do you know?" "Wow," said Ikey, holding up his cap with one hand while he scratched his head with the other. "They say, in general, that she was murdered and the howl he hooted all the while." This very concise summary of the facts was all I could learn, except that a young man, a hearty and likely a young man as ever, I see, had been took with fits and held down in 'em after seeing the hooded woman. Also, that a personage, dimly described as a whole chap, sort of one-eyed tramp, answered the name of Joby, unless you challenged him as Greenwood, and then he said, "Why not? And even if so, mind your own business," had encountered the hooded woman a matter of 5 or 6 times. But he was not materially assisted by these witnesses, inasmuch as the first was in California, and the last was anywheres. Now, although I regard with a hushed and solemn fear the mysteries between which and this state of existence is interposed the barrier of the great trial and change that fall on all the things that live, and although I have not the audacity to pretend that I know anything of them, I can no more reconcile them here banging of doors, ringing of bells, creaking of boards, and such like insignificances with the majestic beauty and pervading analogy of all the divine rules that I am permitted to understand, than I had been able a little while before to yoke the spiritual intercourse of my fellow traveller to the chariot of the rising sun. Moreover, I had lived in 2 haunted houses, both abroad. In one of these, an old Italian palace which bore the reputation of being very badly haunted indeed, and which had recently been twice abandoned on that account, I lived 8 months, most tranquilly and pleasantly, notwithstanding that the house had a score of mysterious bedrooms which were never used, and possessed in one large room in which I sat reading times out of number at all hours, and next to which I slept, a haunted chamber of the first pretensions. I gently hinted these considerations to the landlord, and as to his particular house having a bad name, I reasoned with him. Why, how many things have had bad names undeservedly, and how easy it was to give bad names, and did not he think that if he and I were persistently to whisper in the village that any weird-looking old drunken tinker of the neighbourhood had sold himself to the devil, he would come in time to be suspected of that commercial venture? All this wise talk was perfectly ineffective with the landlord, I am bound to confess, and was as dead as failure as ever I made in my life. To cut this part of the story short, I was piqued about the haunted house, and was already half resolved to take it. So after breakfast, I got the keys from the Perkins' brother-in-law, a whip and harness maker who keeps the post office, and is under submission to a most rigorous wife of the doubly succeeding little Emmanuel persuasion, and went up to the house, attended by my landlord and by Ike. Within I find it, as I had expected, transcendently dismal. The slowly changing shadows waved on it from the heavy trees were doleful in the last degree. The house was ill-placed, ill-built, ill-planned, and ill-fitted. It was damp. It was not free from dry rot. There was a flavour of rats in it, and was the gloomy victim of that indescribable decay which settles on all the work of man's hands whenever it is not turned to a man's account. The kitchens and offices were too large and too remote from each other. Above stairs and below, waste tracts of passage intervened between patches of fertility represented by rooms, and there was a mouldy old well with a green growth upon it, hiding like a murderous trap near the bottom of the back stairs, under the double row of bells. One of these bells was labelled on a black background in faded white letters, Master B. This, they told me, was the bell that rang the most. Who was Master B? I asked. Is it known what he did while the owl hooted? Rang the bell, said Ike. I was rather struck by the prompt dexterity with which this young man pitched in his fur cap at the bell and rang it himself. It was a loud, unpleasant bell, and made a very disagreeable sound. The other bells were inscribed according to the names of the rooms to which their wires were connected, such as picture room, double room, clock room, and the like. Following Master B's bell to its source, I found that the young gentleman to have had but indifferent third-class accommodation in a triangular cabin under the cockloft, with a corner fireplace which Master B must have been exceedingly small, if he were able to keep himself warm, and a corner chimney-piece like a pyramidal staircase to the ceiling for Tom Thumb. The papering on one side of the room had dropped down bodily, with fragments of plaster adhering to it, and almost blocked up the door. It appeared that Master B, in his spiritual condition, always made a point of pulling that paper down. Neither the landlord nor Ike could suggest why he made such a fool of himself. Except that the house had an immensely large rambling loft at the top, I made no other discoveries. It was moderately well furnished, but sparsely. Some of the furniture, say a third, was as old as the house. The rest was of various periods within the last half-century. I was referred to a corn chandler in the marketplace of the county town to treat for the house. I went that day, and I took it for 6 months. So he's going to try it out. He has no qualms about it at all. He doesn't believe in haunted houses any more than I do. Well, maybe I do a bit. Until then, until tomorrow, we have part 3. See how he gets on. Till tomorrow, stay safe, be good. Most will be kind, won't you?